Hey man, I definitely understand what you're talking about. um, Primarily the difference between spirituality and religion is a difference that, in some sense, is easy to make. In the sense that spirituality is not really dogmatic; it's more of an openness to the human experience. And when people ask me what spirituality is, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. But the first one I always say is, well, just being human and acknowledging all of the various facets of human experience. It's quite simple. I mean, whatever people refer to as the spirit and the soul, I mean, these aren't tangible, concrete, physical objects that you can hold in your hand, but there are experiences which meet certain criteria and levels of intensity that warrant such labels. And the other day, on one of my videos from a long time ago, an atheist commented that, because I had said in the video that atheism is just another belief system, a worldview that doesn't have any claims to absolute knowledge or truth. And I really think of atheism as a sort of a very childish emotional reaction to theism, because it's like the child rebelling from the parent. Theism is a very paternalistic and fatherly type religious structure, especially Christianity, Islam. Judaism has a little bit more of a motherly side to it, but Christianity and Islam certainly are paternalistic religions, and the people that rebel against them are typically the same types of people that would rebel against their own parents and against authority figures, and they want to think for themselves. And that's fine and good, and I'm not trying to really demean atheism. I just think there are more mature ways of understanding the human condition. Um, and if we really go back to the Middle Ages, when Christianity was just the dominant worldview for Western culture and Western society, I think it becomes obvious that there wasn't really such a thing as faith in the way we understand it today, in a very rationalistic way, as that faith is nothing but belief in a story, literal belief in a story that we now know makes no scientific sense. That's not what faith was in the Middle Ages, because in the Middle Ages, Christianity was a foregone conclusion. If you didn't think that there was a God, well, you were crazy, because your experience confirmed the fact that there was a God. And, it was backed up by Greek metaphysics and philosophy, and the concept of being was taken over by Christianity and sort of transformed into God. God is the creator, God is the concept of all concepts and the essence of being, and all these philosophical ideas, which people sort of realize, well, there must be something that is everything, and that's God, and it was obvious to them. And Christianity provided the cultural framework within which to understand that very um, vital realization, which itself, the fact that being exists, that philosophical concept um, is in itself very difficult to say anything specific about. But a religious context allows us to create all of these rules and dogmas and storylines, which you would hope lead toward this experiential understanding of being, existence, I am, that type of thing. Um, so people in the Middle Ages had faith, but it was just, of course you have faith. There's no other option. Why not believe in God? It's perfectly obvious that He exists. And today we see faith as just, it's your choice. Either you believe that there's a God and all these stories are true, or you don't. Certainly, when you phrase it that way, it seems like, well, believing in the literal story of creation seems a bit silly and doesn't make much rational sense. So people who have faith are just kind of silly and childish, from the atheist point of view. They don't see themselves as childish. And I don't mean to agitate atheists by characterizing what they want to call themselves as being childish. I mean, I'm just giving my personal opinion of the definitions of these words and what they correspond to, um, the behaviors of people that I've seen who have labeled themselves in these ways. Um, I think that there's this book that Aldous Huxley wrote called The Perennial Philosophy. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but basically the idea is that the mystical core, the spiritual core of all the great religious traditions, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, they all contain at their cores, at the center of their tradition, certain mystical truths that are usually based on experiential states of union with God or with being or with existence or whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, all the religions are, when you get past the cultural baggage, the same because they're based on the human experience, and the human experience is it's profound. And the very idea itself of spirituality is a very modern idea. There wasn't such a thing as spirituality in the way we conceive of it, back in the Middle Ages when everybody was um, totally under the wings of the church and didn't understand the world in any other way but in terms of the Bible. That wasn't spirituality, that was religion. The difference being that religion isn't always based on experience. I mean, Catholicism is closer because you go and you have mass and you participate in what's supposed to be a miracle. You eat of the flesh of Christ, the body of Christ, and you're supposed to experience that, you would hope, as this mystical state of union with the body of the cosmos. And you know that seems to be the last vestige of experiential spirituality that might be in some church traditions, but that's not. Most people don't experience it at that deep level when they do these things. They're just rituals, meaning they go through the motions. They don't understand what they really mean. They just do it because their parents taught them to do it, and that's a dead religion, which really only serves the purpose of stabilizing a society and a morality and stuff, which lends itself to being dogmatic, and there starts the problem with religion. Um, but I think, I agree with everything you said. A lot of times I've called myself a Buddhist. Other times I've said, well, I'm not really attached to any of the Buddhist frameworks necessarily. I just find them useful for interpreting my experience. And I think, in some sense, to just call ourselves spiritual, if we don't have, it's like we can have a spiritual theory. And sure, we could have had spiritual experiences, but sometimes it just helps to have a framework, a conceptual framework, knowing all along that it is but nothing but a conceptual framework, and not the truth itself. We can't start being dogmatic about it, but there are certain conceptual frameworks within Buddhism that make sense to me. And so I appreciate the metaphors that Buddhism uses to explain the human condition and suffering and desire. And so, I use those metaphors, and I like the imagery associated with it, and it seems it's a nice relief from Western Christianity and the dead religions that were handed down to me by my parents, because I didn't really get anything experientially based out of the religions that I was taught by my parents. I just got rules that we should follow because they're in a book that was written a long time ago. So, yeah, I really appreciated your video, and thanks for listening.